Hello everybody. I will welcome all of you to this very special program on, this is actually live on Rajeev Chandrasekhar's site. This is on voting. As you all know, Karnataka elections are happening right now, and this week is the last week before the election, the hectic election run actually comes to an end, and May 5th is actually voting day. What we have here is a special program on what voting has to do with your city, especially Bangalore, and we have here with us a very interesting group, a very famous group of people who really need no introduction to the city, and I'll tell you why. On my left is actually Nicole. Nicole Faria needs no introduction. She's Miss Earth. You would have to go to Mars or elsewhere to introduce her. She's already all over the planet. Next to her is actually Rajeev Chandrasekhar, MP. He is a member of the Rajya Sabha. He's a second-time entrant there. And then we have Michelle, the famous Michelle, Radio Indigo. And we are going to talk about voting, and we're going to talk about voting around issues that many of you have actually sent us over the last day or so. And some of these issues are very serious. They are actually about traffic, water harvesting, police, lakes and all of that. And then other issues are about the overall governance thing itself. My name is Vincent. I happen to be editing an online news magazine. It's called Citizen Matters, and we cover the city in a way that engages everybody and takes issues from them and turns that into reporting, analysis and all of that. So let me start with Nicole. Nicole, you've been involved with the lake project itself.
Yeah.
Now, can you connect your interest in lakes to your decision to vote itself?
I think just the fact that how we treat our lakes and how we're surrounded by it and still live with the stink and the froth and all of that, we as citizens go to clean it up. I've worked with a lot of people from all parts of Bangalore cleaning up lakes, and I think it's just the interest that you take to keeping your surroundings clean and green. And basically the importance, how responsible you are as a citizen.
So do you now, there's a whole bunch of people in this city who are actually involved in cleaning up lakes. Mm-hmm. Some of them are very frustrated. And also some of them don't even feel like voting because they feel the system is not responding to them and they're carrying the burden on themselves to try to clean up the whole thing. How did you make up your mind to actually go and vote? Because the accusation we get on the media about many people of the younger generation is they're turned off by politicians, they don't want to go out and vote, and yet voting is what changes things if everybody goes out. So
exactly
personally for you, why is it important?
I think voting to me is important simply because, see, we have to select a candidate that can keep up to his word, not to make false promises. For example, after I won the title Miss Earth, people did criticize, people did ask questions as to, will she actually go out and clean the lakes? Will she do tree planting? Will she go out? And that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I'm former Miss Earth. I'm not Miss Earth anymore, but I still continue to do what I think is best and what things related to the planet, the ecosystem. I think someone who isn't elected, who can go out and prove what he's doing is right and what he thinks should be done, I think, backing up of the people and with the title will give him a lot more edge and a lot more power.
So let me come back to you in a bit. I'll go straight to Michelle, and I'm going to ask a major question to Rajeev in a bit. So Michelle, you've been, anchoring shows for a long time, and you already told me that you actually hear a lot about traffic. Now, on the face of it, traffic seems to be the city's worst problem. On the face of it, because people encounter that every day. Do you sense that people relate traffic to being able to go out and solve a problem by actually voting? Because the city is growing. None of the politicians have said clearly that they want to stop growth. But if you don't stop growth, can you stop traffic?
No, you can't.
So what is your sense of that?
I think that people don't identify it as a massive issue. Like, people who are in power, they have an easy route. Everything is accessible to them. Roads are cleared for them. I'm not here to say anything, but from a common person's point of view, you don't see what we go through on a day-to-day basis. You are not stuck in a jam for 2 hours. So you don't really understand that this is what the common man faces. This is what everybody out there is frustrated about. And I'd like to meet somebody who wants to change that.
So let me say now, if you see the transport minister, and they've introduced fairly extensive Volvo buses, especially across the IT corridor from ITPL all the way to Silk Board. So the eastern corridor of the city has a very overloaded, overcrowded AC bus system, which they used to call white elephants just about 6-7 years ago. Now people are rushing into these buses. These are fairly well-heeled people who work in the IT sector, financial sector, bank managers, garment factory managers. All of them are actually using these buses. So one would say they've done the right thing, isn't it? I mean, they've actually taken that. Every Volvo bus takes that many cars or two-wheelers off the road.
Off the road, exactly.
So, do you think that gives you a feeling that something is being done, and would you vote because of that, or do you actually make up your mind to vote anyway? And
I would vote anyway.
Why do you vote anyway? Because there's so many people of your generation who are turned off.
Because I believe that if you don't vote, how can anything be done? This country won't function if you don't vote. You have to vote.
So let's say the person you vote for loses, right? How does that make you feel?
It doesn't make me feel good. It won't make anybody feel good. But at the end of the day, everybody out there is whining about something. It's complaining about something. It's cribbing about something. You don't have the right to whine. You don't have the right to crib unless you're out there, you're doing something about it. If you're not doing anything about it, I'll tell you, shut up. You're not voting. You have no right to talk.
So you're saying voting is fundamental. People have to do it and then do whatever after that, right?
Yeah,
it's the first things first.
And to do that, I think you have to judge properly. You have to understand who you're voting for. You maybe do a background check. I mean, see where this person's coming from if you are so strict about it.
So on that note, let me come back to you both again, but I now want to go to Rajeev. Rajeev, you've seen both of them, I mean, what they've said about, what they feel, especially about voting. Now, and she also mentioned background check. Now, in your sense, if you had to tell people how they would identify candidates, because there's a lot of constituency articles happening now, all the major media, including us, are actually doing it.
Right.
If you had to tell people simply, in about 30 seconds to a minute, you know your constituency, you've heard about the candidates. Now, how do you actually decide who to vote for? Even if in the back of your mind you're skeptical, I don't know the right candidates, I feel they're all corrupt. If that's the starting point, help people.
No, and the answer to that, Subhu, is it's not an easy black and white kind of a choice. I mean, it's not. I don't think we have gotten to the point where the decision to choose the MLA is going to be as scientific or as analytical as we would hope it was. Now, so therefore you're left with, and I'm using a combination of what the two ladies have said, left with an instinctive choice about who you think will address what the main problems confronting the city are. And here is where I come into the picture, which is I believe that unfortunately for the longest period of time, the definition or the framing or the narrative of the issues of the city has been too simplistic. So for example, Michelle would say, look, I'm on a two-wheeler or I'm on a four-wheeler and I'm spending 2 hours a day in traffic. And I agree. But traffic is a symptom of a larger problem, which is what I would like more and more people to start understanding. When we talk about governance, governance is not just about corruption or land grabbing or honesty or moral turpitude or property in public life. Lack of governance, lack of planning flows from lack of governance or flawed governance. And lack of planning is why Michelle has a problem with her transportation challenges, while somebody in Whitefield has, let's say, a Volvo bus.
Or Nicole has to worry all the time about lakes.
And really, the fundamental issue that increasingly a young Bangalorean or a young Indian feels that the gap between what they want done in their city and what an MLA does, there is this huge yawning chasm, if you want to call it that, saying, and therefore there is more and more of these personal initiatives. I want to go clean up the lake. Excuse me, the question should be, why is the government of Bangalore, the city government, not tasked with that job of preserving the environment and the lakes and the water bodies, because there is an overall impact of that on health and sanitation and water supply and all of that.
So on that note, let me ask you a question that's actually coming from people. These are very intelligent questions. I wanted to appreciate all the people who sent these questions. People have asked you, how should citizens get a chance that oversee decisions that corporators take, because they also take particular decisions on lakes, roads, and transportation.
And I think so. That is the fundamental reform that we need to see in the city. That is that there is an institutional mechanism of residents and the political executive or the politician engaging. and it is not a favor that anybody does. Currently, the model is, if I'm a nice MLA, I will engage with my neighborhood, or I will engage with my community. It has to be more than that. It has to be legislatively led, like the act that we proposed in Abide, where resident welfare associations are by law allowed to be on ward committees. Ward committees cannot be about friends and families of MLAs or corporators. Point number one. Point number two, simple things like, a corporator or a MLA should not be in the business of laying roads, should not be doing business, because there is an overall conflict of interest that develops. He will then do things that give him more financial benefit rather than doing things for the neighborhood or the community. So there are these fundamental reforms that are required in the way city government and city politicians are organized.
So let me ask you this then. I mean, if you look at the age group that Nicole and Michelle here are from, this is also the age group, Rajeev, where in this city people start planning their careers and start leaving.
Correct.
Because I was actually 24 when I left the country. I came back 10 years later. Now, when you talk about volunteering, when you talk about joining hands with your association to try to clean up a lake and so on, and when you talk about oversight that citizens should have, is there anything special that the young people can do that 40 plus, 50 plus people actually cannot do? Do you sense, is there an opportunity, or is it just the same across?
No. I think that this is the good news. The good news is, I think I'm seeing in this election young Bangaloreans lot more enthused about the democratic process than I've ever seen before. Look, I've been in many living room conversations about whining, as Michelle beautifully put it. I mean, I've met the biggest whiners in the city, and I've met most of the whiners in the city. So I think it's important that we now look to the young Bangalorean to be catalysts for change. And because they are fearless and they are in a lot of ways not as entrenched or part of the system, they can speak out a lot more about what the city and their politicians need to do. Which, let's say, if I'm 45 and I'm whatever, I'm less, let's say, less motivated to take on the system. If you're young, you're careless, you're gutsy, you have a view, you have a point of view, and you can say that. And if that can be directed at reforming the way the city government works, that will be a great catalyst and a game changer.
So let me ask Nicole this, since we're talking about young people. Do you, in your own friend circle or family, relatives, whatever it is, discuss this thing? See this thing about people just whining and not doing anything at all? Do you actually discuss voting? Did you discuss this election? Have you had a sense of what your friends are saying to you? What matters to them?
Yes, definitely. I have a lot of the common topic right now is election. So I think that people do whine a lot, but then again, it's who you choose. If you've not really voted and you're going there just for the heck of it, just to vote for just anybody so you've got your job done, then it's just, you're digging your own grave. You're asking for your own trouble.
So what would you like them to do otherwise?
Go out and vote. Go out and see someone, vote for the right candidate. Vote for someone who's approachable. Someone who you can call, in your locality. For example, N.A. Harris is a good example. Few days ago, someone from the neighborhood had called him and said, I'm having a problem with this. The next thing you know, N.A. Harris is right there. Someone who's approachable, someone who can, like I said, keep up to his promise, even after he's won the election.
So you like people to go beyond just taking the call to vote, but also do a little bit of engagement, assessment, engage with actual people on the ground who are trying to campaign, and see for themselves whether
definitely it has to be on a more personal level for you to get to know the person better, and for you to be a good judge of whether this person is the right person.
So let me ask Michelle this. Michelle, when we were talking earlier, both you and Nicole actually brought up women's safety in the city, right? And it's also, a question here that people, women in the city inherently feel that, it's not safe here, even though Delhi is actually considered pretty major, in terms of unsafeness. So if you had to sort of make this an issue in your mind, would you now be able to, relate, has that helped you actually identify, a particular candidate, or you just think that's an issue for me, I don't care, but I'll vote anyway? What's your take on what should the city actually do for women?
Oh my gosh, sir, if I start, I don't think I can stop. There are so many things.
Let's start with two things.
That is, I swear.
Sure.
I think we need better lit streets. I think we need police to be sensitized to how women function, and that we can't just be locked up at home after 6 o'clock just because, you know, it's unsafe. They need to be patrolling to keep our streets safe. And I think another thing is that women, I mean, for girls, martial arts should be made compulsory in school. If there's an MLA out there who's going to make that compulsory, I'd vote for him. I swear, seriously. I think you start at a
self-defense is
I think it's important. I don't have to carry a taser then. That's what I'm doing right now. Pepper spray and tasers, everyone's talking about it. Everyone wants to buy them. Why? Because you feel so unsafe.
So let's talk a little bit about sensitizing the police.
I want to just say something about
Sure.
this. And I say this from personal experience. About 5 years ago maybe, or maybe not 5 years ago, 4 years ago, when we were doing this Abide report, one of the key issues was women's safety. And we actually had a home minister who understood what we were trying to say and what I was trying to say, and saying we wanted these hotlines for women. You know, a number that women could call and say, look, I'm being harassed or whatever. You know, no-brainer, simple thing. He agreed. We devised a campaign, 4 or 5 volunteers devised a campaign on how we would communicate this to women in the community at large. But the commissioner of police at that time turned around and said, oh, I think this is a waste of time.
Wow.
And I've said this on record. I mean, this happened, and he said it's a waste of time, and it will just create more phone calls on these hotlines. So there is I believe that for every issue that worries us or it concerns us or we are upset about, there is a fundamental issue that needs to be addressed. Now, for example, policing, women's safety is an issue of training them and making them much more sensitive to the need to make women safe. It's not about laws, it's not about having somebody with a stick saying you shall do this. It is about sensitizing a predominantly male police force whose training is about law and order, terrorism, drugs and so on and so forth, to be more sensitive to the issue of women's safety, children's safety, elderly safety and all of that. So it requires leadership on an MLA or a chief minister says, I will make this my priority. And then if he says he makes it his priority, then you can figure out 10 things to do to make this happen.
So let me ask you this, Rajeev. Now, I've spoken to the former DGP of this state, and he's shown me how much expenditure they've had to sensitize the Karnataka police force, and they've gone through training programs, and he himself is skeptical that 1 to 2 months to 3 month training programs that people put police into, they bring people out of the program, there's a little bit more awareness, but before you know it, they're back into society.
Right.
Now, one of the things activists, human rights activists always actually point out is, don't treat the police as a, monolithic entity that can be trained and somehow their mindsets change. They're coming from a society that largely, I would call it anti-women to some level. So they're coming from a society that does not condone their actual behavior. So when you talk about sensitization of the police, can sensitization be even done in a fashion where already adults are in the police and then you're actually training them when they go back home, they're in families and so on, where it's not, they treat their own women at home differently.
This is a dangerous argument, and I'll tell you why. The role of the police or the role of the armed security establishment is not a moral role. They should not and must not and need not reflect what society is doing. They have a set of rules that they have to live by. Those rules are imposed on them by their bosses, the political executive. So if I am the political executive of the state and I say, the women of my state shall be safe, I don't give a damn if the police guy says, no, I don't think the women should be safe. That is the job I'm supposed to do. That is the role of policing anywhere in the world. Your personal views don't come into the picture. Your personal likes and dislikes are not supposed to come into the picture. When you are part of a uniformed force that is operating under a certain political mission, which is why when the Pakistanis come and behead 2 soldiers in J&K, the soldiers don't say, I am pissed off and I'm going to take a couple of guns and go across the border and shoot up the Pakistanis. I would agree that's a great thing to do, separate conversation. But that is why a policeman's sensitivity or cultural, whatever you want to call it, resentment towards a strong woman is not the issue here. The issue is the political executive, the chief minister of the state or the mayor of the city or the councillor or corporator convinced in his head that it is his political mission to keep the city safe for women. And if that answer to that question is no, then we have a problem. If the answer to that question is yes, then we have a solution to work on.
Alright. So let me, on that note, let me move to a different topic, and this is a topic that's been burning the city for the last 1 year, which is garbage. And it started burning the city down only when mounds of garbage started overflowing in all of the, major landfills. Now, both of you, let me start with Nicole. It seems logical to say people should segregate their waste, we should all actually start recycling. It seems so easy to talk about, right? Why is this so hard to do?
You know, that's the funny thing. I was talking about this a few days ago, saying that Bangalore was once known as the garden city and now it's known as the garbage city. I think that, like I've always said this, it all starts from home. You know, it's very easy for me to, I've got 2 floors in my house, so it's very easy for me to go up to the kitchen, get that entire, that bin, and then go from room to room, empty out all the dustbins and put it into one big bag and throw it in the garbage thing, the guys who come to collect the garbage. It's easy to do that, but then what I'm saying is, this is what happens. This is from one house, in the second house, in the third house. Like this, things get accumulated, and then before you know it, it's too difficult to segregate everything. So you might as well keep one bin for like plastics and one bin for recyclable things. You know, that way you're making it easier not just for yourself, but for people who are taking these to the land mills and doing things there.
But the point you're saying is that it needs to start from home.
It needs to start from home.
Now, I've had people call us up and email us and complain, people who are campaigners in their own apartments, that apartment owners sometimes don't cooperate. We've had stellar cases of apartments leading the way, especially JP Nagar and so on. We've had cases where apartments took their own decision to actually segregate, got all the owners together and said, we will. We've had other cases where people outsource it to their maids and they don't necessarily train, so it's not clear what's going on, and they feel upset when an association member of the apartment comes to them and says, you have to segregate. So Michelle, what's your sense of this? This is very basic. In most Western cities, for example, especially cities people from here go and come, you will see segregation happening. So is this easy to do? Or is it like such a big mindset change?
I think because
for Bangalore, global economy?
We've never segregated waste until last year. So it's difficult to just from dumping everything in one bag, you dump it into 2 bags or 3 bags or 3 dustbins. It's just, I think, additional work that people don't want to do. And they'd rather just put everything in one bag and then that gets, transferred and carried on and so forth. So it is difficult. It's just, I can tell you personally, I find it difficult. It's grueling at times. You're like, oh no, I put that in that bag. No, it has to go in this bag. Wet waste, dry waste. It's difficult because.
In your opinion, before I go to Rajeev, is there any way out other than agreeing that segregation is the only way?
No, there isn't.
Right? There's no other way out.
No, there's no other way out.
So let me ask Rajeev this. Rajeev, you already know what's happening. So leaving aside the garbage contracts and the tender scams and all that, what do you think should change to make thousands and thousands of homes in the city? There are probably 8.7 million people. So just divide that by 4, you get 2 million homes. So just to make this a change, is this going to take 10 years for us, or do you think there's a way to make this happen in just a few years? 2 years and all of Bangalore is actually segregating waste.
No, so let's assume that the goal here is a cleaner Bangalore. And it's not a technical issue like segregated garbage.
Fair enough.
Now, I'm sorry to keep saying this, but I think it again ought to be somebody's political mission to say, I will give you a clean Bangalore. Somebody ought to be on a soapbox or a campaign box and saying, I am an MLA, I am a Chief Minister candidate, and I will deliver for you clean Bangalore. Now, clean Bangalore therefore will have a series of things that are required to be done. One element of it is, like Michelle is saying and you are saying, is about transforming habits. Now, look, to transform the habits of 8 million people that have been used to a certain model of garbage being handled overnight will not happen. It will not happen clearly voluntarily. There will have to be legislative backing where it has to be made the law that thou art responsible for your garbage.
Sounds like a commandment.
Yeah, it will have to be that. Because if you expect 8 million people to be homogeneously behaving in a certain clean way, that is missing the woods for the trees. It will have to be first a political mission for a cleaner Bangalore, then legislative backing that this has to be done, and then give it a certain time and a set of incentives for people to say, look, there is an upside to you being clean. There is an upside to you being segregating garbage. And that has to be communicated. Now, unfortunately, all of the key battles in Bangalore are being fought by NGOs alone. And that is not a good thing it's not even a sign for a healthy city. It has to be a partnership between government, NGOs and citizens. And almost all cases in history tell you that the citizens and residents are the last ones to evolve. Because they, like I said, they're different people, different parts of the world, they have different ways of looking at life. So the government must agree, the NGOs must be part of that solution, and we must give time with a set of incentives, legislative backing and infrastructure, including...
So you're saying only if you do that will the sense of how serious this is actually percolate down to...
Because this is transformational, Subbu. Look, let's not flatter ourselves and say this is something to do with habits. If you want to take a city from being a garbage-filled city, then it is a transformation into a clean city. It's cultural, it is habits, but it's also about government, it's also about MLAs, it's also about incentives, it's also about the law.
Alright. So, okay, I think that's a fair assessment. Do either of you want to react to that?
And fight
on the thing about government as well? Okay, so let me go to another question that actually come in as we are having this conversation. And this is on a pretty major problem in this city. All of you will actually know it. It's about illegal buildings. Plenty of illegal buildings, and I've had numbers to me. I'm given that if you say the percentage of deviation is actually 25%, then 90% of the city's buildings are illegal. If you set the percentage of deviation from the approved plan to be 50%, then about 60-70% are illegal. So the word illegal itself is I'm afraid to use the word illegal in India because I think it's a soft word. People just don't really care. So but on the other hand, lots and lots of citizens are fighting to expose large illegal projects which include buildings and all of that. That happens. So let me ask you this. Do you feel that illegal buildings are adding to a problem itself in the city? Or do you feel that it's coming up because there's demand for housing, there's demand for businesses, so they will come up anyway and the government just has to legalize them? Because the government tried to legalize them with the Sakama bill earlier. But that was like saying, you build whatever you want, just pay the penalties and it's now legal.
You violate the law and we'll...
Yeah, so they're actually saying pay a fee and you're done. How do you react to that, Michelle?
It's illegal. The word needs to be taken seriously. Like, it's not a joke anymore. This is leading... I mean, there is a demand, and I understand that that demand needs to be met, but at the end of the day, there is a right way of doing it and a wrong way of doing it. You do it the right way, as opposed to the wrong way, because illegal buildings are not only causing this environment to change. Bangalore is no longer the Bangalore that we loved and we appreciated. The weather changing, everything is changing, and I think this is another one of those problems. It's really small and really tiny, but there is a bigger...
So you're saying illegal buildings are partly the symptom of this completely manifest, concretization of the city that has also led to, heating up and all of that. So that's a worry for you as well. So let me ask Nicole this. Nicole, this is a direct question, right? Now, would you recommend that there is law to demolish illegal structures? There's already law. Would you say that people who are supposed to enforce the law have to go out there and actually demolish illegal buildings? Because young people often say this in frustration, saying just demolish them. And yet there's so much vested interest and power that wants that building to stay that it's hard for officers to do it even if they want to.
I think the word law here and the word legal or illegal in India isn't really taken seriously. If you are in power, then you might as well go out there and show that you are in power. It's about commanding respect rather than demanding it. And I think that for something so illegal to still be there, and for the police or whoever to say, should we, shouldn't we, because this is a problem, whatever, is something that shouldn't even be questioned. If it's illegal, it has to go.
Okay, so you both are just saying, it's the law, it should not be there, so it has to go. So let me ask Rajeev this. We'll take a step back, Rajeev. This person has asked a question, Raj B. Is it possible to get the courts to actually, enforce the demolition of these things? Now, we've already seen lots of litigation. Now, do you think it's actually practical for every building in the city, you take to court, get the court to ask the police to do it?
No, and therein is the tragedy. I'm agreeing with both the ladies here because where if you start saying that law and illegality have interpretive nuances to it, then that can be applied to crime, that can be applied to drunken driving, that can be applied to theft. Where do you say that the law does not apply and the law does apply? Who decides that? So the law is the law is the law. And I think that ought to be the principle for anybody in government and anything to do with governance. That is why the founding fathers created constitution. That's why we have a penal code. Law is the law is the law. Now, getting to your question about, and I want to say something else on this as well, about is PIL a practical way to solve this problem? Absolutely not. Because then you are saying that the people of the city have to police the city. What does PIL mean? It means I or Nicole or you or Michelle have to go to a court and say, I saw somebody violating the law there, please get him prosecuted. But that's not our job. We can do it as an exception. The PIL was designed to be an exception, not to be stepping into the vacuum of governance. But the bigger issue here about illegal buildings is this malaise in Bangalore about real estate and politicians. And I think if you, and unfortunately nobody has done this study, and yesterday there was a very good article in the Business Standard, I don't know if you saw that, by Srinivasan Jain. The number of MLAs who are realtors in Bangalore.
The Republic of Karnataka.
Exactly.
The Republic of Builders.
This is the Republic of Builders. I mean, this is not an acceptable situation that you have MLAs sitting there whose primary objective should be legislation and governance, who are now sitting and doing business with the government. And that automatically, now who in BBMP or BDA will ever demolish a building that is owned by an MLA or the MLA's uncle? It is not possible. Even if it is a blatant violation of law, they will not do it. So, it is a complex issue. It is, on one hand, it is a blatant violation of laws. On the other hand, it represents this whole nexus between vested interests and MLAs, which is what is really the most worrisome trend in Karnataka politics and indeed Bangalore politics for the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so, I mean, can I have 5 more minutes? So, I'm going to ask one, I'm going to take this back to voting, because we actually began with that. Now, you both have heard, you know, what, Rajeev had to say. When it comes to voting itself, in my mind, I am starting to see people who just convinced of it in and of itself, so they don't need arguments, they don't need reasons, they've already made up their mind. Then I see another bunch of people who, no matter how many arguments you give, they feel like, politics is turning them off for the very reasons, Rajeev said, illegal roads, buildings, lakes are being, completely, messed with, all of that. Now, if you were talking to two of your friends, right, and they already knew the city, that the city, and the most important problem with the city now, by the way, is water. It's a substantial problem. We're completely out of water, and they're still allowing new buildings and new housing, all of that to come up. So there's no water, and there are all kinds of prophecies of doom actually happening now. Now, this is understood by people intrinsically. We're not foolish, right? Across the city, people understand it. How will you tell people that yes, it's a cynical, world out there. Yes, it's hard, and yet it's important to, go out and vote. And you feel that they're not convinced. Would you just bother to engage with them? Would you say, oh, he or she is not going to make up his mind, why bother to talk to them? Because it's important. On May 5th, if not enough people go out and vote, because on that morning, if only 20% of the people who actually got their name on the rolls actually go out and vote because they already made up their minds, the rest of them are like, I'm going to go, and guess what, something came up, party, birthday, this, that and all, something happened, and they don't go, it's over. A chance to go to the polls and show people that they matter didn't happen. So these conversations you have now, in the next few days with your friends, and your friends have with their friends, are going to be important. It might change a few people's minds. So what would you tell people? I'm going to ask you both. I'll just start with Michelle. What would you tell somebody in your friend circle or on your show, that if you're not convinced, you know what, here's what you need to do. Make up your mind and go and vote. What would you tell people?
I would actually tell them about my grandmother. And the reason I say this is because she's 84 years old. She can't walk without the help of holding on to somebody. A couple of years ago when she went to vote, they didn't even have her name on the list. And she fought with them. She went to different booths and she's like, my name has to be there, has to be there. And if somebody like her takes it so seriously, maybe she's from a different generation, her thought process works differently. But if she can do it, why can't you? And how can you not? You want to see the country progress, you want to see the city change. It starts with every individual,
So you're saying voting is progressive. So if you want progress, right, voting is progress. That's the first step, is what you're saying, and you want people to be able to intrinsically understand that.
Yes.
Okay. Nicole,
I think that...
have you had any challenging conversations with people who feel like, I'm not going to go and vote?
Lots of people.
So what do you do?
Talk to them and tell them why it's important to vote. See, firstly, this whole election thing, this whole voting thing is not a game of Monopoly. It's
not a game of Monopoly.
Our elected representative is now dealing with people's lives and not fake money. So, and a lot of it has to do with us. A lot of it has to do with how we interact with these people. Like, for example, you don't want to vote. I'll ask you why you don't want to vote. You're going to tell me that it's the same old thing that happens, the same scene. What's the point of voting, right? But now our options have become, we've got more options. We've got a professor from IIM Bangalore. We've got a transgender. And I'm so happy that we have something to choose from. And if a person has a criminal background or a criminal record against them, why are these people even there in the first place? Why are we electing? They should be cut off from, two election seasons.
So you would actually say that there is better choice now
in the
polls than earlier, and so that itself is good reason to go.
We have more options, and that's exactly why we should vote, because it's not going to be the same thing. If you're going to vote for the same people, you've seen the outcome. You might as well, vote for individual candidates, or
whoever it is.
But please vote, because every single vote makes a difference. And I think that a lot of the problems can be resolved just through this one election that's happening.
So let me ask Rajeev. Rajeev, as a parting word, you've heard what the two girls have said. They made it very clear. Michelle said voting is progress itself. That's a very defining statement. Nicole says, what's the point? You actually have better choices now, so think and exercise it. Exercise it with care is what she's saying. Is that it? Will that convince people?
No. Look, I think one of the things we must all accept is that there has been progress. Our own enlightenment, if you want to call it that, of our rights and what the government ought to do for us has progressed considerably. And I can see, I say this at a personal level, the engagement that I'm having with people is a far more intelligent, informed engagement that I'm having now than it was 5 years ago. So this is no longer just about get out there and vote and it's a celebration of democracy and India is the greatest democracy, all of that stuff. This is about saying I have A, B, C, D problems that I believe impact me, my family, my city. I want now the person who is best suited to solve that problem. And that is really the essence of democracy. So I completely agree with Nicole and in a lot of ways Michelle as well, that one of the things that this election is doing is the narrative and the debate in this city, in these elections are not just about the old secularism versus XYZ versus something and something. It is no longer about scaremongering. It is there are people there in this election who are talking the language that we want to hear, which is this is how we will improve the city. This is what an MLA should do for you. This is what parties should do. This is what the law should be. Now, I believe we are at a semi-final stage. This is not a final election, so this is where I disagree with Nicole. I think the maturity of the debate is improving, the quality of the debate is improving, and most importantly, the biggest issue that people are upset about, which is I don't think there is a good candidate, that is evolving. You remember for the last election, the biggest thing that people used to come and say is, I don't want to vote because all of them are crooks, or all of them are bad, or all of them don't listen to me. And I think we have a process now where the election process is being seeded with people who are either changing their mindset or bringing in a new mindset. So 2013 may not deliver for us exactly what we want. I think we will get a few MLAs, hopefully 10, 15, 20, who are more enlightened than before. But 2000, whenever the next one is, I hope that there will be, let's say, 50s and hundreds of them who talk the language that we want to hear, which is, governance, transparency, accountability, outcomes, and so on and so forth.
Alright, so on that note, we're going to conclude this conversation. I hope you heard all of the intelligent reasoning and the arguments that most of these problems are not quick fixes. At the same time, there are very good arguments for why we all have to actually go out and vote on 5th morning. So I'm hoping to see such a major story opportunity for my magazine, and I'm sure the other media will as well, that on May 6th we will all report that there's a substantial increase in the number of people, the so-called middle and upper income groups actually going out and voting. Thank you very much. wonderful to have all of you on board. Michelle, thank you. Nicole, thank you. Rajeev, thanks.
Thank you, Subbu. Thank you.
That was good, interesting.